This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Josh Strickland, host for today, which is Thursday. So, interesting show today. Well, I don't really have any big topics to talk about today. I mean, you can consider it. I mean, I'm talking about the Kansas State Brawl that happened Tuesday night. I'm talking about NFL draft boats. Talking about Derek Jeter and Larry Walker getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. Then I'm also talking about Nolan Arenado and the Colorado Rockies drama. But then I move on to esports because there's an interesting esports story, and then I'm going to go into NFL jersey sales. So it's a very all over the place show. I don't really have much to talk about in the NBA. I mean, I could rehash LeBron and the Lakers getting beaten by the Boston Celtics, or I can talk about Zion Williamson and his debut last night. But here's the thing, I'm recording this at 7:10 Eastern Standard Time. Zion's game does not start until 9:30. So I'm not staying up, and I'm not waking up early just to record a segment about Zion Williamson. But maybe on the Sunday show. So let's kick it off. Tuesday night, you had Kansas versus Kansas State. It is a rivalry of sorts. It's a Big 12 matchup. Kansas, top-ranked team. I think they're number 3. Number 2 or number 3 in the country. Kansas State is kind of a middling team. They don't really do much. So the game, it's 81-60. The clock's running down. Kansas just running down the clock. They're just dribbling it away. Shot clock's dead. There's not much Kansas State can do because they're down 21 points with under 30 seconds to go. Not much you can do there. So, freshman guard Dewan Gordon, stole the ball from Silvio De Sousa and in the closing seconds and tried to score. He just tried to get a layup going. De Sousa then ran him down, blocked a shot violently, by the way. It was a violent block. It should have been a foul, technically, but the refs probably let it go because they want to go home. But, so, ran him down, blocked a shot, and then after that, Sousa stood over Gordon, and then Kansas State's Antonio Gordon, different Gordon, shoved De Sousa, and then De Sousa got De Sousa and K-State's James Love. James Love, who was in street clothes, he was not in the game at all. They squared up on each other, and then that led to De Sousa grabbing a chair, a foreign object out of the crowd, out of the stands. This fight is spilled into the stands. It started right under the basket. Then it went close to the bleachers over there at Kansas State, Kansas's arena there. So he then picks up a stool. Don't know where he got the stool. It might have been a stool of the guy who sweeps the floor after the players are knocked down. I don't know where he got the stool from, but he got the stool, and then he pulls it over his head. He's just about to pull a smackdown on James Love, who's not even dressed out to play in the game. Bonkers. It's crazy. This whole, I saw the video. I was at the Clemson basketball game, and I saw the video on Twitter, and I was just like, what led to this? And there wasn't really anything that led to it. Nothing I saw said it was a chippy game, and both coaches seemed very surprised that this happened. So I'm trying to figure out where this came from. but he picked up a stool and he was about to swing it and break it over someone's back like his name is Dwayne Johnson. It's an insane story. Bill Self, head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks, said it's an embarrassment. It's not something you'd be proud of. What happened, is absolutely zero signs of toughness. It's a sign of immaturity and selfishness. It's more so than it is toughness, which has got to be a tough thing to hear from your basketball coach, the head coach of the basketball team that you play for. I mean, if you've ever played sports, you know disappointing the coach is kind of like disappointing your dad. Unless you hate your coach, then you just don't care. But Silvio plays. He's a starter, I'm assuming, or he's at least like a bench guy that comes off the bench every once in a while. So, you know, you don't want the coach to be disappointed, especially if you're battling for playing time and stuff like that. So, coach is disappointed in him. Fans, I'm sure, are disappointed in him. People around the country are making fun of you because you tried to hit a man with a bar stool during a basketball game, which, by the way, there was still time left on the clock. So after all of this is settled, after they ejected whoever they ejected, I think like 5 players of both teams got ejected because a bunch of people came off the bench to be a part of the brawl, because it was an all-out brawl. Well, it was one of those sports brawls, you know, where like 2 guys are actually fighting and the rest of them are just trying to pull them apart, and there's some pushing and shoving between the other people that are just trying to pull them apart. And that's just because you know, they got involved in the crossfire. So, all-out brawl. As much of a brawl as sports can be. It's not Malice in the Palace standards, but it's close. It makes people it reminds people of Malice in the Palace, and that's why so many people are talking about it. Mostly because it's a crazy event to add on to an already crazy college basketball season, which if you want to learn more about the crazy college basketball season, you can check out the Tuesday show where I talked about the crazy college basketball season in depth so far. So this is just adding another chapter, an amendment to that part of the show last week. On Tuesday. So Weber, who's the Kansas State head coach, said, our young guys, they want to play hard. They were disappointed and frustrated. You don't want to take that fire out of their belly, but at the same time, you've got to handle it right, and we created a bad thing. So this is, of course, referring to DeJuan Gordon stealing the ball originally and trying to score down 21 when the other team's trying to run out the clock. So I understand what Weber's coming from here, where you don't want your young guys to not compete, you know? This is a culture thing. You want them to compete until the final buzzer. That's what you hear all throughout athletics. We want you to compete. We want you to go until the fat lady. It's not over until it's over. It's not over until the fat lady sings. It's not over until the final buzzer goes off. You know. So I mean, he says that the young guys, they play hard and they want to do that and stuff like that, and they got fire in their belly, and that's understandable from a coaching standpoint. From a player standpoint, there's no reason why you're trying to steal the ball and score when you're down 21 points, unless you're trying to add on to your own stats. Because he probably thought as soon as he stole it, nobody was going to follow him, because who cares? You're down 21 points. He was probably thinking nobody's going to stop him, and he was going to get an easy layup and score, and nobody would say anything about it. Instead, it turned into this whole thing, and I think Gordon got suspended. Gordon probably got suspended. I'm not really sure. The big story was D'Souza, because he was the main aggregate aggressor in this whole saga. So I understand where the Kansas State coach is coming from here. You definitely want your young guys to still compete, still play their hardest until the buzzer goes, till the clock hits 0, stuff like that, cliches, whatever. If you're a player, why? Because I guarantee you, everybody else on the Kansas State team is just like, okay, let's just go home. We got our asses kicked. Let's just go home and just enjoy the bus ride back and just, get ready for the next one. I'm not saying he's selfish. I'm not saying Gordon's selfish or anything. I'm just saying it was kind of unnecessary. So, D'Souza, fun fact, he was caught up in a pay-for-play scheme that forced him to miss his sophomore season. So he's kind of been, he went through that his sophomore year, and now he's going through this So he's been through some stuff here in college basketball. So the news came out today, Wednesday, that D'Souza is suspended indefinitely pending outcome of review by the university by Kansas University and the Conference of the Big 12. I don't think he's going to get kicked out of college basketball. I don't think they're going to just straight up kick him out. He's probably going to be suspended for. He probably might be suspended for the rest of the season. If he gets suspended for more than that, I don't know what he is. I don't know if he's like a senior and this is his last year, or he's just a junior. If he's just a junior, I see them suspending him for the rest of the year. Maybe play in the tourney. Maybe, probably not though. So they'll probably suspend him for the rest of the year. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see what punishment they pull down on him. But it was insane. I mean, it was one of those sports moments that you'll probably see in ESPN Top 100 crazy moments or whatever that they used to have. It's not going to be up there with Malice in the Palace, because Malice in the Palace was just insanity. People, like, fans were getting punched in the face. This was still just the players, but it did go into the crowd, and there was a stool that almost got broken over someone's head. So, anyways, up next, when we get back from break, we'll talk about the NFL draft boat. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain it to you, and I'll explain how dumb it is. So, stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So the NFL is trying to do their best Love Boat impersonation as the NFL Draft, which is being held in Viva Las Vegas, which of course is being held in Las Vegas because the Oakland Raiders are moving to Las Vegas. Now, whether or not you like that idea, it's happening whether you like it or not. So the Oakland Raiders moving to Las Vegas, so of course NFL wants to make a huge splash in the city of Las Vegas, which of course you've already have the Vegas Golden Knights, which is the first professional team to move to Las Vegas, and they've had a lot of success so far. But I think the Vegas Knights, they've had a lot of success so far because they've kind of played into the Vegas tropes. You know, they have the theatrical openings and stuff like that, which really was highlighted in the postseason and the Stanley Cup playoffs, which I don't know if the Raiders can replicate that. I don't think the Raiders can replicate the theatrical elements. I mean, maybe they can, maybe they won't. I don't know if they're willing to do that because the NFL overall takes themselves more seriously. As many know, it's called the No Fun League for a reason. So I understand that the NFL takes themselves a lot more seriously, so I don't know if the theatrical element is going to stay with the Vegas Raiders. And then also you add in the fact that the Vegas Knights won right away. Can the Raiders win right away? Now, the Raiders almost made the playoffs this year. They have a good team. They still have 8 more years of John Gruden. They have plenty of time. They had a good draft last year. We'll see how they do in this year's draft. This year's draft will be in front of the Bellagio, which you don't know what the Bellagio is. It's a hotel. I've never been to Las Vegas, I'm going to be honest with you. But it has a huge fountain. It's a famous fountain. If you watch any movie that involves Las Vegas, you've probably seen the Bellagio fountain. Shoots up water, does all this fancy stuff. So they're having it near there. The story kind of changed as updates came in, but when I first saw it, I wrote it down, and I was like, oh, this will be funny to talk about. But anyways, so they're going to have a stage in the Bellagio fountain. So they're going to build a stage on top of the fountain, which it's a pretty meh size fountain. And I was like, originally I was kind of like, oh, that's cool, I guess, if it's like at the edge of it. And, I don't know where they're going to put backstage, and I don't know how you're going to build a temporary structure in a fountain, but, more power to the NFL. They can get it done. Then I saw the update, which was draftees will be delivered by the stage. Delivered to the stage by a boat. Now, 3 things came to my mind about this. First off, why? Just why? I know I just talked about how the NFL is no fun league and they don't go for theatrics, but this is kind of an unnecessary theatric because I feel like it's not interesting. It's just kind of extra to be extra. You know what I mean? So, second thing I thought is, like, is this supposed to be, like, exciting? Like, are people supposed to be excited by that concept? Are draftees supposed to be like, hell yeah, I'm going to be on a boat? Are they going to be like, they're going to be like T-Pain and Lonely Island? I'm on a boat, yeah? No, no, they're probably not going to be like that. Thirdly, I think it sounds awful logistically because where are the draftees coming from? Where's the backstage? Where's the boat coming from? How fast is the boat? How many boats are there? There's got to be more than one because depending on the speed of the boats, is it just like a jet ski? That'd be cool. I'd enjoy a jet ski, but it's probably not a jet ski. How fast is the boat? What are the guidelines? Because what if a player falls into the fountain? Stuff like that. So, unfortunately, I then saw an update come out after that said this is just for the red carpet. But these things still are valid. I'm not going to watch the red carpet, of course, because who watches the red carpet for the NFL draft? You might be craving. I understand people crave football that much. That's why the draft is such a big deal. That's why the draft is where it is on the timeline. Because people need football. They need the NFL. They need to get their fix in. And the draft is a good way to get the fix in. It is a very good way to get hope to some fan bases, and it's a good way to get your football fix. However, why a boat? Why there's just so many stupid things about this. So does that mean each draftee is going to be coming individually on a boat? Like every single one that goes to the draft, there's individually going to be on a boat? Or is it just going to be like one huge Noah's Ark of all the players and their families, and they're just going to come out one by one? Which, by the way, how would that happen? Because remember, it's in a fountain. I just don't understand this story at all. But it did get me thinking. There are some fun things you could do with it. I wrote these down before I found out it was just for the red carpet. I thought it was still for the draftees. After you get drafted, you have to get on a boat. Then the boat has to slowly go across a fountain, by the way. And then you have to get off on a stage, not fall in the water. Then you got to be like, Goodell, why'd you make me do that? And then, dap him up, make Goodell seem cool or whatever before he fines you like $5,000 for no reason. And then take the jersey and then you leave. Then you're immediately on a plane. You don't even get to celebrate or anything. So, here are the Buccaneers. Do the Buccaneers get a pirate ship? Like the GM of the Bucs, does he get the red carpet treatment? Does he get to come in on a pirate ship? What about the Raiders? The Raiders could also come on one. The Vikings, do they come on a Viking ship? What about the Dolphins? The Dolphins have dolphins? Will there be dolphins? Seahawks, do they just come on like a bird-shaped boat? These are questions that need answers. Jets, do the Jets just not even bother with the water? And just go straight, they'd fly in on like a mini helicopter or something. These are all very stupid suggestions, but I'm just trying to have fun with this very stupid idea. I understand you're trying to make the draft like this big spectacle that you want everyone to watch. But here's the thing. The NFL draft is the most watched professional league draft. That's not saying much. It's really not. Because the NBA draft, I find the NBA lottery way more enticing than the NBA draft. And what? The lottery happens like a month before the NBA draft. By the time the NBA draft comes along, you already know who has the number one pick. You already know the order of the picks. and you already know who's going to be number one, who's going to be number two, who's going to be number three, and there's very rarely surprises in the NBA draft. You have the MLB draft, which they're shortening it soon with the eventual dismantlement of minor league baseball, which is not cool at all. But currently, the MLB draft is like 200 rounds, and people like Johnny Manziel and teams just get bored by the end of the draft, and they just draft random people. Russell Wilson got drafted, which, I mean, he was a baseball prospect. He played baseball in college. I understand that. But still, they didn't draft him seriously. They drafted him because they were just like, yeah, publicity. Like the Tim Tebow situation with the Mets. You think the Mets actually think Tim Tebow can contribute to their Major League Ball club? No. Not at all. They got him because their minor league teams wanted some publicity. The Mets wanted some publicity for it, and it worked because there's a lot of Tim Tebow diehards out there, especially where I'm at in the Southeast, which makes no sense to me, but there's a lot of Tebow diehards. I've had to argue with a lot of people about Tim Tebow. Some people think Tim Tebow didn't get a fair shot in the NFL, even though he's been cut by like 4 teams. Not talking about Tim Tebow, though. Talking about the draft. So the NFL draft is the most exciting draft out of the major sports leagues. But like I said, that's not saying much. Because by the time the NFL draft comes up, it's not like the NBA where they kind of drag it out and you don't know who has the number one pick. That's why the lottery is so interesting, because you're just like, who even has the number one pick? Any team has a chance of getting the number one pick in the NBA lottery. Or at least to select like the 20 teams that didn't make the playoffs. They have a chance. And it's interesting because it stops tanking somewhat. I mean, that's hard to say about the NBA because tanking is kind of rampant in the NBA. They actually have a huge issue with it. But, the original thought of it kind of deters it, because just because you're the worst team in the league does not guarantee you a number one draft pick. So, the NFL draft. You already know the order. We already know the order. The draft is in 4 months or something like that. It's like in April or May or early May. Something crazy like that. It's in 3 months. We already know the order. The only interesting thing about the NFL draft is trades. Because those kind of happen out of nowhere and they like flip-flop everything. But like, mock drafts are getting so good now that there's really no reason to watch the NFL draft unless something crazy happens, which very rarely does. Teams are usually dead set on who they're going to pick. So I understand that the NFL wants to make it a little bit more exciting. I think it's a little too over the top because logistically it's going to be terrible. Visually it's not going to look great. And then also it's not going to be entertaining. It's just going to be a bunch of big dudes on a boat. It's not entertaining at all. But we'll move on. In the next segment, we'll talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame and the newly inducted members of Derek Jeter and Larry Walker. We'll discuss their careers when we come back from this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
The Baseball Hall of Fame has inducted their two new members. It is, of course, Derek Jeter, the captain of New York Yankees for the longest time, and then, of course, Larry Walker, who was on his last ballot in the MLB Hall of Fame, in the Baseball Hall of Fame. By the way, it's not an MLB Hall of Fame, it's a Baseball Hall of Fame. It's the Baseball Writers of America Hall of Fame or something like that. So it's baseball writers who cast their ballots, and there's more and more every year, and it's kind of crazy. So let's jump into it. I want to talk about both these guys' careers because they both have really great careers, and we're going to talk about some storylines that surrounded them prior to their induction and then post-induction storylines, because Derek Jeter has a post-induction storyline. So, who is Derek Jeter? If you don't know, Derek Jeter played for the New York Yankees for like 20,000 years. He was the star player for the Yankees dynasty during the late 90s, early 2000s. They won like 5 World Series or something like that. He generated more memorable moments, turned more kids into lifelong fans for the Yankees, always represented himself well. When you think about the Yankees in the past 2 decades, you thought about Derek Jeter. He was in movies, and people don't think about this. It's the Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily all baseball statistics and stuff like that. I mean, you legit, Derek Jeter transcended baseball in a sense. He was in movies. He was on talk shows. He hosted Saturday Night Live. He was on all these things. He was Mr. New York, pretty much. So he did all that. He represented himself well, represented New York Yankees really well, even though everyone hated him. He did have memorable moments. You know, everyone tried to do the Derek Jeter jump throw to first when they played shortstop when they were younger. Because I know I did, even though I didn't even like Derek Jeter. I hated Derek Jeter. I hate the Yankees. But whatever. So 3,465 career hits with under 300 homers, which is very impressive because, especially now with the power, the 3-outcome way the game has become, homers are pretty much a basic part of it. But under 300 home runs, 6 all-time, with 6 all-time in hits. He has 5 World Series championships, 72.4 WAR, career WAR, which is wins above replacement. 310 career batting average. He was Rookie of the Year, and he was a 14-time All-Star. So, he's pretty good. He's known for his consistency. He had the same team. He had the same stats between the regular season and postseason. He played a full season of postseason games. 161 games in the postseason alone. Pretty much a full season. And in those postseason games, he had a 308 average compared to his 310 career batting average. He had a 374 on-base percentage, 465 slugging percentage, and then an 838 OPS. So now, everybody knew he was getting in. Everybody knew he was probably going to be first ballot because he was a big star in a big market in New York. So it wasn't really a question of win. It was more of a question of will he be unanimous or not. And that was the main story for Derek Jeter after he got inducted in the Hall of Fame. He was 1 vote away from being a unanimous election. And there's been a lot of people on sports media, on Twitter, on radio, television, that are not happy about that. Not happy that he was 1 vote away from being unanimous. And this has been a thing in the Baseball Hall of Fame ballot, because some writers, they know that this one player is going to get in with their vote or not. It doesn't matter. They know they're popular enough that they're going to get in without that one person voting. So what they'll do is they'll give that vote to someone else, which if you don't know how the Hall of Fame ballot works, you get 10 votes. You're given like a sheet of players, and they're all on the ballot either because it's their first time on the ballot and they got to get like a certain percentage of the votes to stay on the ballot for next year, and then you can be on the ballot for like 10 years or whatever like that. So you can straight up just not give people votes. You can not vote for anybody. You can literally just hand back a blank ballot, and that's completely fine. That's a thing you can do. Or you can just check off 2. You don't have to check out. You don't have to use all 10 of your votes. So one person, obviously, decided that they thought Derek Jeter was going to get voted in by everybody else, so there's no point in voting for him themselves. So they voted for someone else. And, man, people did not like that. People wanted Derek Jeter to be unanimous. But here's the thing. There's only one person who got a unanimous selection, and that was Mariano Rivera. And I'm kind of on the fence about him being the first unanimous selection. Babe Ruth wasn't a unanimous selection. Hank Aaron wasn't a unanimous selection. Ken Griffey Jr. was close, but he wasn't a unanimous selection. And you're trying to... I understand that the way it happened, I feel like if it wasn't just one vote, it wouldn't be such an outrage. But if Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, or Ken Griffey Jr. can't be unanimous Hall of Famers, why does Derek Jeter, of all people, get to be? Now, I respect Derek Jeter. He was really good at what he did. He was really good at being consistent. He was really good for the Yankees, and he had memorable moments and all that jazz. But you have all-time greats that weren't unanimously selected to the Hall of Fame. So I really don't want to hear about Derek Jeter not being unanimously elected. Anyways, we'll move on to Larry Walker, which is probably the least known person. Some people probably don't know him, so he's a lefty slugger. He was a 5-tool right fielder, played 6 years with the Expos, including the 1994 strike year, where the Expos had the best record in the majors, but because of the strike, the World Series was canceled that year, so best team that never was, pretty much the Montreal Expos. He played 10 years with the Rockies when the Rockies first started out as a franchise, led them to their first playoff berth in 1995, a year after the 94 strike. Won the MVP award in 97 with league best 49 home runs and a majors leading 1.172 on base percentage. He has 3 NL batting titles. He has 7 Gold Glove awards, 5-time All-Star. He has a 72.7 WAR, which, like I said, Derek Jeter had a 72.4, which is 55th all-time in baseball's history among position players, 19th among outfielders. He had 2,160 hits, 383 home runs, with a .313 batting average. He's the second Canadian to make the Hall of Fame after Fergie Jenkins, which I don't know who that is. He's a Cy Young winning right-hander who was inducted in 1991. Great name, though. He's the first Rockies representative in the Hall of Fame, and the reason because of this is because of the Coors Field curse, which some people have mentioned. So what the Coors Field curse is because of the thinner air in Denver and the way that Coors Field is laid out there in Denver. Players' stats are kind of inflated because of how a lot more home runs, a lot more hits. It's not a pitcher-friendly park at all. I mean, there's plenty of evidence of this. Like, there's evidence of like Rockies players who play for the Rockies for a couple years and then go on to a different team, and their batting gets a little worse. So there is the stigma that your stats get inflated because of Coors Field. So that's why Larry Walker, which this was his last year on the ballot, this is his last chance of making it in. This is why it took so long, because it's kind of viewed. Apparently, it's viewed almost as bad as taking steroids. Playing in Coors Field is about as bad as taking steroids, is what some baseball writers are saying. Apparently. I mean, he only played 10 years. He only played like 1/3 of his career in Coors Field. But his home stats is a 1.068 OPS. His away OPS was 865, which is not bad at all, of course. But you can tell there's a huge 300-point jump in his home and away OPS. So it's interesting. He's the first Rocky, as like I said, to make it. Todd Helton is on the ballot this year. He's another Colorado Rocky that probably should get in, but probably will take a while because of the whole Coors Field thing. So there you go. These are 2 guys going in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I congratulate both of them. They're both really good players. Sorry, Jeter, but you, in my opinion, don't deserve to be unanimous. I mean, the way that it went down, he deserved to be unanimous, but I don't think he should have been unanimous in the first place. But that's just me. So when we move to the next segment, we'll be talking about another Colorado Rocky whose stats may or may not have been inflated by Coors Field. We're going to talk about Nolan Arenado and the Colorado Rockies drama when we get it back on the other side.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
To another Colorado Rockies story, another baseball story. Actually, baseball has been going crazy these past few weeks because last week we had the sign stealing scandal with the Houston Astros. We had all that drama going on with the Astros, Red Sox, and the Mets firing their managers. This week we had the Baseball Hall of Fame, which kind of is getting overshadowed still by the sign stealing phenomenon, and then you have the Nolan Arenado drama. It's kind of like the Major League Baseball is taking a tip from NBA in making your offseason interesting, getting people drumming up interest throughout the whole offseason. But anyways, we'll talk about it. So who is Nolan Arenado? He is the third baseman for the Colorado Rockies. He is a great player. He is a player that also wants to leave Colorado. So he is just one season in his new 8-year, $260 million contract, which is a lot of money. After weeks of speculation, the Rockies might trade Arenado. They've been thinking about it for the longest time. Jeff Bridich said, "We have listened to teams regarding Nolan. Really nothing's come out of it. We're going to move forward pretty much as we expected with Nolan in the purple and black as our third baseman." So he's pretty confident that they're not going to trade him. They're going to keep him. He's going to start for the Rockies and see how it goes. See if he drums up any more offers or something like that. So Arenado did not like this, apparently. He did not like this vote of confidence that he's going to be on the Rockies. He feels like he is disrespected. Arenado responded to the statement by saying he was hurt and felt disrespected. "Jeff is very disrespectful. I never talk trash or anything. I play hard. I keep my mouth shut. But I can only get crossed so many times." So, where did that come from? So, clearly, Arenado, behind the scenes, probably asked for a trade. And he's pretty much not getting his trade. Which is bad for the Rockies at this point because now his trade value is going down because everybody knows Arenado wants out of the Rockies. So Colorado is going to have to trade him no matter what deals they get unless they want a very upset star player. So Arenado, give you some background on all of this, he was on the team when the same situation happened to Troy Tulowitzki just 5 years ago. Troy Tulowitzki, all-star shortstop for the Colorado Rockies. He was their star player for the longest time. He was on the same team as Arenado. I think Arenado was just in his first couple years in the league, and when Troy Tulowitzki thing happened. So the Rockies general manager, Jeff Bridich, now twice marginalized his team's best player. 5 years ago, there were rumors that Troy Tulowitzki was going to get traded from the Rockies. The reality is that Troy doesn't have control of this, and neither does his agent. That's the contract, basically saying Troy doesn't get to choose where he gets traded to. We do. You signed the contract to be with us. Your rights of a baseball player is to us. You want to leave? Sure, but you're going to go where we want you to go. Which, as a professional team, as a professional organization, it's not that off base. It's happened plenty of times before. It's happened in the NFL, it's happened in the NBA, it's happened in the NHL too. You don't want to trade star players to teams that you don't want to trade star players to teams that have a chance at winning a world title, and then your fans look at you as like, why didn't we win with him? You don't want to deal with that scrutiny. So I understand from that, but still have to respect your players. Because if you don't respect your players, then how are you going to get them to play? So, 2 months later, Tulowitzki was traded to Toronto. Tulo felt blindsided by the trade, saying that he felt he wasn't shown any respect being included in the process, meaning he did not want to get traded to Toronto, which Toronto had 2 good years with Troy Tulowitzki, but he was always injured when he played for the Blue Jays. I think does he still play for the Blue Jays? No, I don't think so, but that's just me talking to myself. So Troy Tulowitzki traded to the Blue Jays, and then he felt blindsided by it because he was not in any of the trade talks. They just kind of traded him. They just kind of shipped him out. It's kind of like when the Raiders wanted to ship Antonio Brown out to the Buffalo Bills. It's just one of those things where it's kind of like, you're going to cross us, then we're going to send you to the worst possible place. Which, like I said, Toronto, they made the playoffs, and they had Jose Bautista at his height, and they had David Price, and they weren't a terrible team, but it was not where Tulo wanted to go. The situation also happened in Miami with Giancarlo Stanton. Don't know why I said it like that. I don't know why I was French. This happened just 2 years ago. Stanton hated the direction the Marlins were going, so he demanded a trade, which is understandable because if you see where the Marlins are now, what plan did they have 2 years ago? Because the Marlins, the attendance is down. They're pretty much tanking every year. They trade all their best players because they had Stanton and they had Yelich and they had Marcuna. And so they had an outfield of Stanton, Yelich, and Marcell Ozuna. And they traded all of them. They got rid of all of them. They were like, we don't need this. So, happened there. Marlins threatened to keep him in Miami for the rest of his 13-year contract. Which, by the way, he signed a 13-year contract worth like $500 million or something like that. But they threatened to keep him in Miami for his full 13-year contract, which is insane to threaten a player with staying in a city where you signed a contract to stay in for 13 years. It is kind of crazy. I know how some people can view it as these players are unprofessional and they're selfish and stuff like that. But if you were a player and you signed this long contract with the team, and the team is showing no signs of being competitive anytime in your long contract, wouldn't you also want to leave? And it worked out for him, for Stanton. It didn't work out for the Marlins, as the Marlins trade him to the Yankees, and the Yankees are now a perennial contender, while the Marlins are the only team that's not competitive in the NL East. They are the NL East punch bag. So Stanton called him out in the media, and then, like I said, he got traded to the Yankees soon after. So the same situation is kind of happening with Arenado. It's kind of a combination of the two situations. It's where Arenado wants to leave, but he feels like he's being disrespected. He feels like they're not going for his interests in any of the trade talks. The Rockies finished 71-91 last season, and this is crazy. They have not added any player to their major league roster this offseason. They have not spent a single dollar on any new players. They have not spent a single dollar on free agency. They've re-signed some people. They did arbitration to get the same people that they had for a 71-91 season, but they never went out and got players. So if you go 71-91 and you don't go out and get players in the offseason, what do you think is going to happen? My best example is, this is a bad example, by the way, but it's kind of a similar situation, where the Braves last year, all throughout the offseason, it was like, we need to sign bullpen guys. We need a better bullpen. Our bullpen looks kind of shaky right now. And then the first 2 months of the season, the Braves bullpen was trash because they didn't spend a single dollar on their bullpen in the offseason. Now, of course, it worked out for the Braves. They made some key trades before the trade deadline. They made some good changes. It was a good manager and general manager tag team over there. But will that happen with the Rockies? As it's clear, general manager Jeff Bridich probably needs to be fired for letting two of the Colorado Rockies' biggest stars in the past decade hate being in Colorado and spending no money, not a single dollar, on free agency. It's crazy to me. So, potential landing spots for Nolan Arenado. I've talked about this before. You have the Atlanta Braves, and then you have the Washington Nationals. Both teams looking for third baseman. Braves lost Josh Donaldson to the Twins. Nationals lost their guy to the Angels, and I'm blanking on his name for some reason. But so they're both looking for third baseman. At currently, Nationals, Carter Kieboom. Braves don't. So Braves kind of need him more than anything, but they're going to have to trade for him. And they're going to have to make it look... I mean, they probably don't have to make it look as good as they needed to make it like a week ago. Because like I said, tanks the trade value if the player doesn't want to be there at all. Because what are you going to do? Every other team knows he doesn't want to be there. So how are you going to trade him? So that's interesting. So up next, we got a weird story. I got an interesting story. It's new. I haven't talked about this. It's about esports. We'll get to it right after the break.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
What is esports? I'm 23 years old, and I find myself asking that sometimes. So esports is where you play video games and sports, and there's no denying that esports is a kind of phenomenon at this moment in time. There's a bunch of money going into it. There's a lot of investment. People are investing in esports. People are investing in esports teams. Mark Cuban has an esports team. NBA teams have esports teams. They're sponsoring. There's just a lot of money going into esports at this moment in time. So I read an article today. I know, right? It's crazy. So the European Tour, which, if you know, there's a lot of golf tours. You have the PGA Tour, of course. You have an Australia-Asia Tour. You have the European Tour. You have Asian Tour. Stuff like that. So there's a bunch of tours going on, and they all have different regulations. Even the PGA Tour, each of the majors have different rules and regulations and different governing bodies and stuff like that. So pretty much the way I take from that is that anything can happen in golf. Pretty much, one tour can do something, another tour can do whatever. So the European Tour, in partnership with DreamHack, which is a esports brand, they have a competition every year called DreamHack, and it's one of the biggest esports competitions of all time. They partner with DreamHack and Topgolf, which, if you don't know what Topgolf is, that's that driving range that has like the pretty colors and you can play games and stuff like that. So they launched their inaugural season-long e-tour at Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship. So how would this work? How does this work? So 8 players competed on-site at Abu Dhabi Golf Club for a prize total of $10,000 in the online mobile golf game World Golf Tour, which is made by Topgolf or sponsored by Topgolf, one of the two. So World Golf Tour is played by more than 60 million people worldwide. Apparently there's a computer. You can play it on PC. You can play it on your phone. Stuff like that. So it's just a virtual golf game. Have you ever played one? It's a virtual golf game. You know those games that are in bars and it's got a little ball and it's a golf game? Yeah, it's pretty much that, except on your computer or on your phone. So, 2018, this is not the first time this happened. 2018, Topgolf partnered with USGA to release the first virtual U.S. Amateur, which was similar to the game's virtual U.S. Open that they already had, which This game, by the way, has like 15 courses, so you can play on actual courses. It probably doesn't have the Masters because the illustrious Masters license, even Tiger Woods games didn't have a Masters license until like 2014 or something like that. So they already had a virtual U.S. Open in the game. It's been running for more than a decade, with more than 4.7 million participants in it. 2018 alone had 3.5 million rounds of the virtual U.S. Open played. 3.5 million, not holes, rounds. So times that by 18, and there you go. You got how many holes were played. So Peyton Gordley won the Abu Dhabi golf. He won this competition. He's also known as Golf X3, which is a very creative name. Got to give it to him. He won a $5,000 check for winning this game. The 8 players were chosen because they played a 4-day online qualification tournament that featured 45,000 entries from 169 countries. So this is the first of 5 events that will coincide with the European Tour over the course of its season. The 5 winners of each event will face off at the European Tour season-ending DP World Tour Championship at this is going to be a tough one to say. Jumeirah Gulf Estates in Dubai. That final game will be for a prize pool of $50,000. Now, you might be thinking, $50,000 to play a video game? That's insanity. $50,000 to play a video game. Yeah, it's been a thing. Esports has been a thing for a long time now. It started out, you have MOBAs, which are like League of Legends, and you got first-person shooters, which is like Counter-Strike. You got Call of Duty. You got Halo. There's some Halo stuff there. Then you got Rocket League, which is a soccer game that you play with cars, which is really fun, by the way. So this is not the first instance of people making money off of video games. Of course, you have YouTube and gaming channels on YouTube making money off of playing video games as well, but they aren't competitions. Then, of course, you have the fighting game scene where you have Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Smash Bros. Is a big one, and there's a bunch of other ones, like there's Dragon Ball Z games and stuff like that. If I'm losing you, don't worry, you can skip this section. I'm trying to make it digestible for people who do not know what any of these things are, but I know I'm just kind of spouting out things because I do play video games. I partake in the video games, and I kind of have a stake in this. Not really. I don't play competitively, of course, but I do have kind of a stake in this. So, if you think $50,000 is crazy, I did some research. So, League of Legends featured a prize pool of $9.15 million for their 2019 competition. 2019, that happened last year. Fortnite, which is the game kids are still playing. I thought that fad would be over by now, but they had a pool of $64.4 million recently. And then to bring it back into sports, the NBA, as I mentioned, they have their own teams. They have an NBA 2K league where they play NBA 2K, the video game, which in the video game you can make your own player. You can make your own basketball player. You can level them up with attributes and stuff like that, and you can play with other people online. And in that, you can play 5-on-5 games online. So, what NBA did is they saw this trend of esports happening, so they kind of jumped on the bandwagon, and they created an NBA 2K league, where each team has their own 2K team, and they draft players. I didn't really do a lot of research on the draft, but it seems like they don't draft like a new member of the team every year. It looks like they kind of like just let all the players go from their contracts, and then they draft them based off that. They draft different players from different teams or whatever. It's kind of like a fantasy draft at the beginning of every year, pretty much. So these 2K League players get paid a base salary of $32,000 a year, which is about the equivalent of the G League. If you play in the G League, you're getting paid as much as the NBA 2K League. Then, of course, they can sign endorsement deals and earn income in addition to their compensation guidelines. The inaugural league of the 2K League, which is a couple years ago, had $1 million prize pool in their tournament. So, now that I laid out all these facts, esports, are they here to stay? Video games are getting increasingly more popular, and the negative sides of some sports are starting to become more and more well known, such as football. There is a Madden League. So there are people that want to play football, but they don't want to play football, if you get what I'm saying. So in the Madden League, for instance, you have a bunch of guys who probably played football in like high school or whatever, but they never made it to a college or made it to the NFL or anything like that. So they play Madden. They spend a lot of time playing Madden, and they join the Madden tournaments. And if they win the Madden tournaments, they make money off of it. So it's basically, and there's a huge argument about whether or not they're considered athletes. There's arguments whether or not esports are considered sports. I will not get into those arguments, because if you really think about it, the word sports, the meaning of sports, the description of sports, very vague. A lot of things can be considered sports. Now, I don't talk to my friends about this because some of my friends think tennis is not a sport, which is just insane. But esports are here. They're getting boatloads of money. I kind of want to jump on the train, not as a player, as a competitor, more as a commentator. I would love to be a commentator for the NBA League or the Madden League or anything like that, because, you know, I feel like it would not be much different than commentating a regular sporting event, but there is a closeness because it's only one player that's playing the game. So interviews are probably easier. Post-game, pre-game stuff probably easier because you only got to get one guy. That guy is the coach. I mean, these dudes do hire coaches, by the way. Some of these guys have coaches to coach them in these video games. So esports, they're here to stay. It's crazy. It just blows my mind because I feel like esports every year gets bigger and bigger, but I really don't talk to anybody that watches these esports. So when we move on, we will move on to NFL jersey sales right after the break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
As we all probably know, most professional sport leagues are only interested in their star players. You have to have a star player that transcends the sport to get people to talk about you. So, for instance, earlier in the show, we talked about Derek Jeter. He was a transcendent player. He was a star player for the Yankees, and he transcended baseball. He was hosting Saturday Night Live. He was in movies. People knew who Derek Jeter was. Basic people, casual people who do not watch sports at all, know who Derek Jeter is. I don't know anymore if they do anymore, but for the most part, people know who Derek Jeter is. So this of course brings me into NFL jersey sales. The playoffs are pretty much done. We have the Super Bowl coming up next Sunday, and here we are. We have the Pro Bowl this weekend, which who cares? Honestly, who cares? I'm not going to talk about the Pro Bowl in case you're wondering. I might talk a little bit about it, but I'm not going to talk about the Pro Bowl. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Pro Bowl. But so jersey sales are always interesting to me because it pinpoints who the big team or who's the big player of the year. So of course, this year you would say the big player is Lamar Jackson. And then, of course, you have like Odell Beckham, you have Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, all these dudes. So let's jump into it. I have the whole list. I have interesting factoids about it. And this is all brought to you by Front Office Sports, which is a website that deals with the business side of sports, which is a very interesting read to add it to your daily reading. I suppose it's part of mine. It's part of one of my favorite routines because I sign up for their newsletter. They send me their top stories of the past day or so, and I look through whatever I find interesting. That's how I got the esports story. That's how I got jersey sales. So the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes has surpassed Tom Brady to be the top-selling player during the 2019 regular season based on sales of all officially licensed NFL player-identified merchandise, according to the NFL Players Association. Brady had finished each of the last seasons as the top player on the list, finishing second in 2019. So Tom Brady is still very much a star player, especially up in good old Boston. So, just for clarity's sake, here are the top 15 players. I will count down. So we're going to start with 15, move up. You obviously already know Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. So, I'll count up. Jimmy Garoppolo, number 15. Russell Wilson, 14. Carson Wentz, 13. Drew Brees, 12. Juju Smith-Schuster, which is kind of the surprise on this list, to be honest. He's 11. So Saquon Barkley, 10. Dak Prescott, 9. Aaron Rodgers, 8. Khalil Mack, 7. Odell Beckham Jr., 6. Baker Mayfield, for some reason. I mean, it's probably because Cleveland really bought into him, so a bunch of Baker Mayfield jerseys were bought before this season happened. So, makes sense, I guess. He was 4. Ezekiel Elliott is 3. Then you have Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes rounding out the list at 2 and 1. So, interesting ones in there. Juju Smith-Schuster, of course. He is the new guy, new receiver in Pittsburgh because of the Antonio Brown situation, but it's still kind of surprising. He has a great personality, and I really like it. He really connects with kids because he was big in Fortnite. He's big in the esports that we talked about in the segment before. So it's kind of understandable that he's a popular player for Pittsburgh especially, and probably a lot of Pittsburgh guys probably getting rid of their Antonio Brown jerseys right now. So makes sense to me. Jimmy Garoppolo making the list. It's interesting. He's he's average at best quarterback, especially so far in the playoff, and he made 15. But as you can tell, quarterbacks rule the world here. So it's all about quarterbacks. As you can tell, quarterback is one of the most important positions on the football field, and because of that, it will always be most popular because everybody cares about the quarterback. ESPN, NFL, they all care about the quarterback. Post-game interviews, you don't see them going to J.J. Watt. You see them going to Deshaun Watson. So there you go. So it's mostly quarterbacks. Just looking at it right now, it's probably like 11 of the top 15 are quarterbacks. Odell Beckham, not a shocker. Cleveland, super excited to have Odell Beckham before the season started. Khalil Mack makes sense because he was a big force for Chicago last year, and he still is this year, of course. Ezekiel Elliott makes sense. Dak Prescott makes sense. So, 4 rookies appeared in the top 50. You had Daniel Jones at number 27, which I guess makes sense because the Giants were really excited about him. Nick Bosa at number 29. Josh Jacobs, which was interesting to me, at number 37. He is the running back for the Oakland Raiders. He had a good breakout season for the Raiders. I mean, his rookie season, but he had a great season for the Raiders, so I guess most of these sales were during the season instead of before in cases like Baker Mayfield and OBJ. So good for Josh Jacobs. Another one that definitely happened during the season, Gardner Minshew at number 42, which makes sense because he's kind of a meme. People love memes. Jacksonville Jaguars always have a meme quarterback because they had Nick Foles, they had Blake Bortles, now they have Gardner Minshew. Top 5 jersey sales combined from Adidas, DCM, Fanatics, Nike, and Under Armour were Ezekiel Elliott, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, and Dak Prescott. Among sales of collegiate co-branded jerseys from Under Armour, Mahomes, Texas Tech jersey, led all players for a second straight season, while J.J. Watt's Wisconsin jersey was the runner-up, which, of course, these are Under Armour branded, so most colleges don't have the Under Armour branding. Although now that I think about it, I don't think Wisconsin has Under Armour branding, but I would have to double-check that. But I know that Texas Tech does, and makes sense. Patrick Mahomes, number one best-selling quarterback jersey in the NFL, and then number one collegiate co-branded jersey. Makes sense. Top 5 players in youth apparel from Outer Stuff included Mahomes, Brady, Odell Beckham Jr., Mayfield, and Khalil Mack, which those are names that people like to see. Mahomes, he's been lighting up the charts. Brady, his mainstay, has been here. OBJ and Mayfield, once again, that probably contributes to Cleveland just being excited for those two before the season started. So it was probably a bunch of sales before the season happened. And then Khalil Mack rounding it out, which, like I said, Chicago enjoying Khalil Mack as much as they can. So then rounding it up with the 5 best-selling Funko vinyl figurines, which if you don't know what those are the if you ever go in a GameStop or like a recreational store or anything like that has like comic books and stuff like that. I mean, you can probably see it in the mall or something like that. It's probably Walmart as well. So they're like little figurines that have like a huge head for no reason. They're not bobbleheads or anything like that, but they have huge heads for some reason. So Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Saquon Barkley, Mayfield, and Aaron Rodgers. So one constant is Baker Mayfield. So people really bet on Baker Mayfield before the season started, which I'm not counting him out, of course. Sophomore slumps happen. It happens. I couldn't play in the NFL, so I'm not going to judge him for having a bad year, especially under Freddie Kitchens. But it's very interesting that Baker Mayfield is on all of these lists. But all right, that will do it for this Thursday edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about any of these stories. You can message me. You can tweet at me at Strickland_Josh. You can tweet at me. Let me know what you think about any of these. Let me know about esports, NFL jerseys, my Derek Jeter take, the Kansas State brawl. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Also, for the GSMC Sports Podcast, please rate, like, subscribe. Do all those things. Makes me happy. Makes my bosses happy. So please do all those things. You can follow GSMC Sports on Twitter at GSMC_sports, where Chris and I do a great job at keeping up with that social media game. If you ever want to know what our reactions during games are, you can, of course, follow us both on our personal channels, but we also both post on the GSMC Twitter account. So thank you, everybody. Hope you have a great weekend. Hope you have a great weekend not watching the Pro Bowl, because I'm not. Don't know if you are, but I'm not. We're fine with that. So looking forward to Sunday. I have some topics already in mind. I'm going to try to record it. I'm recording it either Thursday or Friday, so it might not be up to date. So just be warned by that. I'm going somewhere for the weekend, so I need to pre-record it. Just letting you know. So thank you for listening, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.